Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans. This is the second semester of 2017. I'm calling it 2017.2. And this is lesson 2. So we're starting off, just grabbing my little sculpture here. We're starting off with the initiatory or level 1 materials. And last week I spoke all about the chakras, blah, 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 or energy centers of the body. Used this diagram a lot and spoke about how these represent different layers of reality and consciousness or information that is moving, just putting this down here, moving at different speeds. So it's almost like we are having a reverberation or energy that comes out from this central convergence point. So this is like, this little shape here is like the map. And there's tons of information that is symbolically encoded in this map. And so what I'm going to do today is tell you all about this shape and exactly how it is created, and then we'll go into my little diagrams that I have developed as my own shorthand that kind of works so that everybody has a common vocabulary in this class. So let's start off with the beginning of this shape and how it is created, and I'll go into the whiteboard in order to do this. Okay, and make sure where the pencil is here. Good. So this is all about building the dimensions. And if we start off with, this is a simple circle that is like a hoop, like a flat, like a hula hoop. That would be the simplest form that we're starting off with. And then from there, when we add the next dimension, adding a dimension means adding a movement, like adding a new movement. So if you then imagine this hula hoop starts spinning around, now this hula hoop, we've got one like this, and we've got one that goes around like this, and one that goes around like this, and I'll even add, these are like lines of latitude and longitude so that we can understand it spins around and turns into a sphere. So a flat line spins around and turns into a sphere. And then if we take that sphere and we spin it around in a circle, what it creates is a torus shape. So the torus shape is what I'm holding in my hand, this little yellow sculpture. If I were to draw it, you know, it has the central divot point like that. And then if it's a donut, if it's a literal donut, like the cake that you buy from the store, you know, this comes around like this. I drew that donut in cross section because that's part of my shorthand. So if it were a literal donut, it would be shaped kind of like this, right? But I always draw it in cross section. So what you're seeing is what's inside here. And this donut hole, this central area here, is very important. That has to do with the path of least likelihood, the timelines that go through the structure. So yes, this what I'm drawing, what I'm showing you, this is all made of time. If I can emphasize, if there's one takeaway, if there's one thing that is important for us all to know and remember and focus on, it is that this is a visual depiction of time. So you can also see, hopefully this isn't too tiny to see, the sculpture that I'm holding, it has two tori at 90-degree angles. When I'm talking 90-degree angles, I'm talking about, you know, like angles that are like that. So we started off with a hoop, it turned into a sphere, the sphere turned around in a circle, and so this is the highlighting in red here. This is the pathway that that sphere took, and as it made that pathway turning around in a circle, it created this membrane here, this membrane here. So this area in here is hollow, and this is the membrane that is created by the sphere that is turning around. Okay, so then when we add, oops, go backwards in time. When we add the next dimension, the next movement, what we do is we take this entire shape and make it spin end over end, this direction, kind of like if you could imagine a baton or a salt shaker or my pencil spinning end over end, twirling end over end. And when we do that, these areas that I've highlighted here in red, they end up spinning around and making a circle also. And the circle ends up looking like that, and it ends up creating a complementary vortex at 90-degree angles. And that is exactly what you see. I'll go back to my face. That is exactly what you see here in 3 dimensions. So I made this intentionally so that people wouldn't be confused when I when I do my flat line drawings. My flat line drawings are the equivalent of stick figures. So sometimes in these whiteboards, you see me do stick figures. We could do a whole anatomically correct, you know, rendered face, but we're not doing that. Just doing stick figures so that I can speak effectively. So emphasizing in this particular lesson that this shape is the shape of time. and that relates to each one of us and each one of our experience of moving through time. So I usually focus on one quadrant or one quarter of this right down here, what I'm kind of highlighting with my pen in front of my face, this area right down here. So now I'm going to go back to the whiteboard and talk about, I named this the time vortex. I'll just use a plain color here. Let me put this down so I can draw a little bit more easily. So this is the time vortex. That's that lower edge of the sculpture. This is one of those membranes that is created by the sphere as it is rolling around the cake area of the donut. And if I were to label this, I would label this as year 0, and time moves forward as we go upward like this. So this would be year 1, year 2, year 3, up to, year 1 million billion, right? And this, I told you that we're going to talk about that central timeline, that central, like imagine it like a tent pole or a yurt pole. That is what holds up this whole entire structure. This path I call the path of least likelihood. And that pathway doesn't end. This is the one timeline. We have one timeline out of this whole bundle of timelines, because I'm going to draw in, there's many, many, many other timelines. Just like there's a fiber optic cable that is made of many, many little tiny, smaller cables, or a wire that is made of many, many smaller wires. This whole entire time vortex is made up of a bundle of timelines. And all of those timelines, here I'll just draw them in blue, all of those blue timelines terminate on this membrane. And this membrane is a flowing membrane. I call it the membrane of death. And it is analogous to a waterfall, like a flowing sheet of energy. So energy begins down here at the year 0 and moves upward, 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 upward through this time vortex until it hits this flowing membrane of energy. And then what it does is the membrane, it makes it go in this direction, circulates all the way back around, and it comes out and it tries it again. This is basically the flow of energy through the chakras or energy centers or timelines of our life. Now, I'll also get into how this was not the intended format for our lives. Like, we were actually created before our genetic degradation with the capacity, here, let me choose a different color now, with the capacity to just go on this red central pathway and never have to hit the membrane of death. That was the original design of this wonderful vehicle that we are using, our wonderful body. However, we became genetically degraded about 10 or 20,000 years ago. And when that happened, it meant that we couldn't see the time field effectively, and we couldn't navigate it effectively. So, and the navigation has to do with making choices, adopting different belief systems, and refining our characteristics. And I'll get more about that in level 2. But for right now, what I'm just trying to get across is the idea that this represents like the song of your life. So I'll also draw this as if we are looking, so this is what I just drew over here. That's a cross section. Let's look at it from the top down. So here's this outer periphery that I just drew. That's this area out here that I just highlighted in black. And this, I'm making an exaggerated portal, but that one little portal, that's the wormhole up here at the top. That's the only doorway out of this level of reality. And if we were to look in terms of probability, the area that I have highlighted in red is the area where there is the highest probability of a spark of awareness landing. Like, imagine an arrow being shot at the target. There's a very great likelihood if I shoot an arrow at this target that it's going to land there, or there, or there, or there. The least likely thing that would happen if I shot an arrow at this target would be if the arrow went directly to this center, to the bullseye. That's the least likely thing that would happen, because there's literally only one little chance that it can happen there, but 10 million different chances that it can happen here. And that is exactly what is going on in this map of our life, or the song of our life. I also use the analogy of this is like an old-fashioned analog record. You know, like the type of record that has a groove on it, and you play it with the needle on the record and make the groove go. So we are starting out at this outer periphery, just like on an auditory sonic record, and we travel in, as we make different and better choices, and as we become refined, until finally we hit that central wormhole, or that central doorway out of here. So one, as you can see, what I just depicted on the record of your life, the playing the song of your life, that it's a simplification. What I was drawing over here to the left, these lines that just go up and down vertically like that, that is a simplification. That what we actually have in this time vortex, I'll draw it in green so that you can see it better, are spiral timelines that go around like this and go up the center like that. So when it's much easier just for, like I was saying, like I do shorthand. If I'm going to draw a person, I just draw a stick figure like this. I don't draw the entire face. I don't draw the entire anatomically correct person. When I draw this time vortex over here, it's a simplification and it's a diagram that is intended to get across these ideas. And I draw these little timelines as if they are going up and down like that. But that is just a shorthand. So don't be too literal in that interpretation, because these are actually very long spirals that spiral all the way up the center like that. And so this is how we navigate life now after this genetic degradation, that you are born, okay, I'll start from the right-hand side. You're born over here, and then you maybe get to live for 1 minute and you hit the membrane of death. And it's not even dependent upon conscious choices that you might make as a tiny infant. It might be because the umbilical cord got wrapped around your neck, or you got exposed to some kind of pathogen, or maybe you were born in a war zone and a mortar exploded and killed you. It's a very steep learning curve. You can also see, because of the shape of the membrane of death over here, it's a very steep learning curve. And when you hit the membrane of death, that energy over here flows in this direction, goes back to the beginning, but you've already experienced this possible combination of ideas and events and behaviors. It's like a filled up puzzle piece. You go on to the next puzzle piece, and then you try it all over again, just like that brilliant, comedic, profound movie, Groundhog's Day, with Bill Murray, where he kept on reliving the same 24-hour period over and over and over in an attempt to get out. Hey there, Annette, it's good to see you. So when you're a little baby, you die immediately, you go back to the membrane of death, you get disassembled, you come back to the beginning, you come to the position directly next to where you started from, and then maybe you live for 2 minutes, and then you hit the membrane of death, and then you circulate back around, and then you start again, and then maybe you live for 3 minutes, and this goes on and on and on. You can see I'm exaggerating here, but this goes on and on and on, and it's a steep learning curve. And so you understand, because it's a shorthand, you're not just filling up the ones from the left to the right, you're filling up all of these at the same time, because this is a swirl that goes around like this. And what happens is, at a certain point, you learn language, and then the learning curve becomes a little bit less steep, because initially this is all just about learning how not to die, like how not to catch disease and die, how not to get the umbilical cord wrapped around your neck and die. But at a certain point, you're more autonomous, and you're maybe a little toddler and you're walking around. You have to learn how not to fall down the stairs, how not to be eaten by a bear, how not to eat poison. And it's a lot easier when you learn language, and then the people around you can start to tell you, hey, don't touch that stove, it's hot. Hey, don't fall down those stairs. Hey, don't go in that dangerous place over there. And if you listen, then you don't die. So the whole idea is, I'll go back to my face. The whole idea is, and hold this up, navigating this time vortex down here is very similar to those old choose your own adventure novels that you might have done in grade school or as a teenager, where if you're in the book, there's a narrative structure. It says you get to blah blah path. You're walking down a road, you get to blah blah path. Do you turn to the left? Do you turn to the right? If you turn to the left, go to page 3. If you turn to the right, go to page 27. And that, dependent upon the choices that you make, that will affect your narrative structure in the storyline. This is what's going on in our time vortex, in our time body. So initially, the choices that we make are not verbalized conscious choices, like the choice to get infected with a disease and die. That is not something that most infants consciously do. At a certain point, we get downloaded with the human operating system, quote unquote, the human mind. Then we get the virus of language, and then we learn how to understand and decipher the symbols, the auditory symbols that the rest of the people around us are giving to us. In a hunter-gatherer society, they would tell us, always eat these leaves, never eat those leaves, never touch that cave, something that will eat you lives there, only go to that cave where it is safe. But in our domesticated human form and world, things are different, but you still have to learn, like, how not to drink poison. Don't, that stuff that's under the sink is poison. You're not allowed to drink that. Sitting over here is safe instead. So this is the whole idea. And then, of course, making choices on the road of life. Here we go. As I go back to this pencil coming up, as I go back to this basic drawing. So after you have mastered how not to die, like you're a little tiny infant and you have done all of these various iterations and you've learned how not to die, then we go more into the question of personality characteristics and refinement, because what really brings us into alignment with this central core timeline that continues going indefinitely is cultivating certain personality characteristics or belief systems, or turning into the person that you are really meant to be. So that part of this, as I'm describing this, is understanding that some of these are like, you know, just diseases, accidents, and things like that. But at a certain point, these deaths become the expression of our internal belief system. Like the death becomes the external manifestation of some poorly structured thought system inside of us. I mean, what I'm really trying to say with all of this is that death is an aberration, a thing that is not supposed to actually exist. What is supposed to be going on is that, oh, I'll go with the eye analogy here. If this is what this is an eyeball right here. I'm drawing an exaggerated eyeball. This is the optic nerve that goes out the back of the eye. So here is the iris. Here is the, you know, cornea over here that I'm pointing to, the clear lens on the front. And here is the retina on the back. And the retina has a focal point. And I'll just kind of draw this kind of like an oval. The retina has a focal point over here. That's where we look at everything with. And that is where there's the greatest concentration of receptors there in the fovea, the focal point. And then we have around that the periphery. We have all of these places that are not our focal point, and that we have fewer receptors there. And we just kind of sense a generalized sense of color and movement. Like if I'm waving my fingers around the edge of the periphery of my vision, I don't see exactly what I'm doing. I just see that there's something going on there. That is exactly what our time vortex or time field is supposed to be like. This center point, that wormhole, that is who you really are. That's supposed to be your focal point of experience. And that's supposed to be where all of the receptors of your awareness are focused. And the stuff that's going on here in the periphery, this is meant to just be not experienced directly. It is meant to be experienced peripherally. Because again, this has to do with the designer of the cosmos, like what I call the great composer, the great conductor. The great conductor did not actually design you to be blind and to not be able to see where you are going through time, and to have to endlessly hit the membrane of death and circulate back around and try it again and try new patterns, like new combinations of thought and behavior and belief system until you finally get out of here. That's not the way it was designed. That's like some kind of cruel and capricious video game. That's why I bring up that movie Groundhog's Day, because that's how reality was presented, like a cruel and capricious video game where no one actually gave you the rules and said, if you want to get out of here, here's what you have to do, and you just have to kind of bumble along and figure it out. That's not the way that this was all intended to be experienced. When humanity was genetically degraded, it meant that the higher faculties were diminished. And I'll just hold up the little drawing that I used last week. The higher faculties, meaning everything that's green and above. I hope the camera is not too blurry here. But this central point right there, that is what is inside of each one of our neurology. And that is what we are supposed to use to be able to navigate the time field. So again, this knowledge, this information that I have, I'm sharing it with as many people as possible in order to uplift and empower. And I got this information from using my higher faculties. I didn't get it from another earthly teacher. And the whole point of learning about this and how this time vortex is shaped is that first you, sculpture falling on the floor. First you learn about this shape. I'll hold it so you can see it a little bit better. And that's like the foundation. And then you learn how to transform it into this shape. And that is why it is valuable. It's just like if you're like, oh, Aurora, if this is music class, why do I have to learn a C? Why do I have to learn a D? Why do I have to learn these fingerings? Like, can't I just jump into the music? I'm telling you, there's a value, stick with it. Learning this shape leads to eventual freedom, because I understand that some people are understanding that the chakra system they find to be a limiting or constraining system. We're not meant to have to circulate through endless iterations before we finally hit that path of least likelihood. Guess what? If I just hold up this sculpture and if I don't go back to the whiteboard, that path of least likelihood, that kind of goes up the center here, that is the path of being what would be defined as an ascended master. When we align ourselves with that timeline, what we are doing is refining our own behavior and personality characteristics to be the version of ourself that is the perfected version. And perfected, when I say this, what do I mean? I'm not talking about some kind of biblical literalist perfection where if you are a good dog, then you get patted on the head and you get saved to Lord Jesus' heaven. That is not what I'm talking about. And what I am talking about is the idea of, just like if you write a term paper or a thesis, and this is like digital editing. I'm not talking about if you ever wrote your thesis in the time of typewriters, but I'm talking about now with word processing, that the way most people write a paper is first they just begin with the general information dump. They just write everything that needs to be written, including spelling errors, including grammatical problems and inconsistencies. And then they press save on the computer. And then they go back into it and they reread it and they fix they make edits. That was wrong. That was wrong. That needs to be reworded. That needs to be taken out. That needs to be put in. And then they press save. And that's just the first draft. It's not done. It's not ready to be handed into the big professor. And then it takes many, many subsequent edits in order to be able to say that the term paper or the thesis is finished. So for us, our lives, our term paper, our thesis is finished when we are this central core possibility, when we are that central path of least likelihood traveling through this time vortex, and when that is what the road, like the pathway that we are aligning ourselves with, that we know we are on the right road. We have done all of these personal aspects of personal refinement, just like you edit the term paper. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that you are a bad or wrong person if you're out here at the periphery. I'm trying to get across the idea that people that hit the membrane of death are not bad or evil people. It's not like, oh, you were bad and evil, you deserve to hit the membrane of death. No, the whole idea is that hitting the membrane of death is a symptom that you haven't necessarily learned everything you needed to learn or done everything that you needed to do in order to avoid that possibility. So one of the key things is, as we begin to cultivate our unconditional love, I'm standing up here at the level of the chest, unconditional love, that creates a vortex. And I'll even bring up this picture that I shared last week for anyone that is watching these videos. If they haven't been on, I'm making squinty scrolly faces, squinting and scrolling, but let me bring up this sketch so that you can see what I'm talking about. That this shows, and have it a pencil so I can write on this. Here we go. This down here, boom. Well, this I'm trying to write down, yeah, there you go. What I'm highlighting right down there at the bottom. So that is the energy center that emanates from our heart, our literal pumping flesh and blood heart. And it creates this big, giant green energy field that goes all the way around us. And that creates the foundation for the higher faculties. And these are the higher faculties that I've got over here. That this is that telescope that one can use in order to look through time and look into the future and see what's going to happen. I recognize that if I asked most people in this time and place, hey, is it normal to be able to see through time or see into the future? Is that something only special people can do? Almost everybody would say, no, that's a superhuman capacity. Only special people can do that. But the truth is, we're all supposed to be able to do this. We're all supposed to be able to look down the road of time and see where we are going. Hey, am I going in a good direction? No, if I'm going to hit the membrane of death, let's not go in that direction. Let's switch it around. Maybe we'll go in this direction instead, and then we won't hit the membrane of death. And the higher faculties, just very briefly, and I'll get into this in a subsequent lesson, but it is the combination of this indigo chakra or energy center and this violet, even though I didn't switch to the violet pen, this violet energy center that is at a 90-degree angle. So this is, okay, back to the abstract creation of this shape. And then we'll get a little bit into, yes, this is being archived. Someone just asked if this is being archived. Please do not be concerned. It's being recorded, and I will be able to share that with everyone later in the day. And I'll just check my time to see how I'm doing on doing pretty good. And then I'll open the floor up to Q&A, but I wanted to do this basics. So, okay. So I understand that there are a lot of people that speak about chakras, and they usually speak about it as an amorphous ball, kind of, just aligned on an anthropomorphic or, human-shaped form. And not everybody is recognizing that chakras they actually have a structure to them, and that chakras are made out of time. And when we're talking about, I'll bring up a picture. Hold on a second, let me get something good here. Here's a picture that I use all the time. All right. So in this shows the chakras individually aligned according to the way that they fit along the spine. Let me just choose a color so you can see. So this would be an ideal anatomical format. Like if I'm drawing a picture of a person, the person is perfectly healthy. Everything is totally wonderful and healthy in their body. However, what often happens is sometimes you can see these chakras are perfectly horizontal and parallel to one another. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they are slightly canted at an angle. Sometimes one might be like that, one might be slightly canted like that, one might be slightly canted like that. So if we go back to my little sculpture here, what that means, if this is that core central timeline possibility, and we're supposed to be oriented like this, if the chakra is canted at an angle, this timeline hits the membrane of death. This is the whole idea. So just back to this, we are not intended to have to die. We are not intended to come here as physical beings and essentially be endless victims, constantly dying and then being reinserted, dying and being reinserted. I don't watch a lot of TV, however, I feel that the TV show Westworld is very worthwhile to watch because it's a wonderful modern shorthand or cultural allegory for the idea of constantly dying and hitting the membrane of death and having to be rearranged. And when you are rearranged, okay, so that's, you're totally getting it. Let's get into this time vortex shape and what is going on the actual membrane of death. And I know I just picked it up a notch. Going faster. I'm choosing a good color. All right, so this is 0 and this is infinity, and this is that timeline that never ends. Let's choose a different color now. If you're this dot, that's your birth, and you're moving forward through time. And let's say here's where you die. Where you die, you're supposed to be frozen, and you're frozen in the format, that last moment. I call it like the final denouement. It's like the last frozen moment of the movie of your life. So really, on this membrane that I'm highlighting right now, that membrane of death, it's the world of death. It's the membrane between worlds. And level 2, I'm going to get into aspects of afterlife. This membrane between worlds is literally comprised of all of these last moments of your life. And if we said okay, like this is you as an infant, and let's say this is you as a person who is 85 years old, that this guy up here theoretically comprises all of the moments in between. If we just took a snapshot of this guy at his last moment of death at age 85, it would contain, by implication, all of the moments that led up to him being that person at age 85, or whatever, at whatever level of life you die. So let's say you die over here. Let's say your friend bought you a parachute ticket for your birthday, go parachuting, jump out of a plane, and you jump out of a plane and the parachute doesn't actually open and you die. So on that timeline over here where you die, that final moment contains, hey, here's that little moment where your friend gave you the ticket, and here's the moment where you met the friend, and here's the moment where you moved to the town where you met the friend, all the way back, that there are implied timelines. So what I'm really saying with all of this is that if we look at the membrane of death, it is completely filled up with these last little frozen moments. And now I'm going to draw stick figures sticking out of those, like that's a little head with legs sticking out of it. Those are legs sticking out. These are all people, frozen people stuck on there. That's you. That the membrane of death is completely filled up with little dead versions of you. And if we have that, then we have all of these implied timelines that come down here, but we don't really have to keep all of the implied timelines. Here, let me find an eraser. Oh, sorry, I'm squinting so much. If I can erase this, yeah, there we go. We can erase everything that's, oops, I just erased something I didn't want to, but you're getting what I'm talking about. We can erase everything that is in the, what I would call the negative space. Trying to find the thing to draw with. And there we go. That we have been able to erase everything that is the level of negative space. That's actually information that doesn't really matter, because what really matters are all of these final denouements. That's like, oh, here, I'll go back to my face. That's like your hard drive. Here's my little external hard drive where I save all of these video webinars to and upload them to YouTube. So the last moment of your life, the snapshot of your life, that's like the hard drive, even though I'm not a transhumanist and I don't equate humanity to being just a mere aspect of software. But when you save up who you are, when you complete your life, take that final snapshot, you have all of the information, all of the experience that you have gathered up to that point in your life, and that is saved as part of your presentation and what you have on the membrane of death. So in level 2, I'm going to talk about vortex-based math and how that membrane of death and that arrangement of events on the membrane of death relates to numbers and number theory. Because what we're also talking about here, and I go through this a lot, so don't be concerned if I don't explain it all right now in this lesson, the train cars of reality, that we have different moments, and each of these moments, each of these discrete individual moments are joined together by the genetic dance, by the looping, twisting, whirling, twirling, morphing dance of our DNA. So if this is the body of, 1 o'clock, then this is the body of 101, this is the body of 102, and this is the body of 103. You can see where we're moving through time as we do this. And it's this, the dance of your DNA that actually makes your consciousness jump from body to body, because we have been here doing this webinar for almost 45 minutes, and we haven't consciously been saying to ourselves, okay, jump now, jump now, jump now. We don't have to do that. Our DNA is constantly doing that. So what we're really understanding on the level of this time vortex, when I draw this shorthand again, all of these little dead versions of you, these little circles that I'm drawing here, that's a snapshot of your DNA in a particular format. That's a snapshot of your DNA in a particular format. That's a snapshot of your DNA in a particular format. And this process of moving through time and dying and going back to the beginning and reinserted is the long, slow, laborious way of investigating what is the optimum genetic format to be able to get to the wormhole and get out of here, get out of this level of reality. So again, I understand we're on a planet that has been highly traumatized. I understand that many people see the chakra system as being a system of constraint, constraining their freedom, or even synonymous with abuse, like abuse on a grand level, that being killed and reinserted over and over, not according to the free flow of energy. The idea is that this information is meant to be empowering. I'm not just going to give you a horrible situation and describe it in excruciating detail without giving you the solution which is flying rainbow lasagna. Because when you dance with your DNA with this dance, you don't have to hit the membrane of death anymore. And I only bring up my own experience of being a walk-in as an example and a template of how to do this kind of thing, because this is how come this body is still alive instead of being dead. The previous occupant, my predecessor, literally was killed, and this body experienced a literal metabolic death, and I, as a stellar abstract life form that usually isn't in a physical body, vibrated the DNA into this shape. And that meant that the membrane of death, or the experience of death, could be avoided. I could steer in a different direction and have a different experience. And I'm clearly here alive and walking and talking. And so that is what I have to share with others, a template, an example from my own life that can be then applied to other people's lives. So the idea is, one does not have to die. One does not have to hit the membrane of death. One can transcend that necessity or abrogate that necessity by flying rainbow lasagna. And in level 2, I'm also going to get into this, the idea, what if someone that you in your life that you love dies, or someone who you admire that dies? how can we think of that journey? Where did they go? Did they transcend death? Did they fail? If on your experience of someone, if the overlapping experience of time is that that person is gone from your timeline, where did that consciousness go? So that's going to be level 2. I'm just giving you a little bit of lasagna appetizer on that. And now I think I've done a lot of speaking on this topic, and let me go into opening the Q&A, because I know there were lots of questions in the chat. So now I'm going to scroll all the way back and make squinty scrolly faces while I go through the chat. And thank you to everyone who's here. Thank you. Oh, it's wonderful to see everyone. Okay. Yes, and if it's possible for you to share the link into the different groups, that would be wonderful. And I understand if you couldn't share it. Thank you, though. Okay. Still looking at the questions. All right. All right, so this person is saying that they feel it is a miracle that they made it to the age that they made it to age 62, because they've been through so many, sketchy, near miss things. I have many friends in my life that have been through near miss car accidents. One person had a bullet whiz past their head, all of these different things. Those are alternate timelines. They're peripheral vision. Because if we stay focused on that central core timeline, we can continue onward without having to die. However, it is very informative. Like if I'm just like, I'm going to get in my car and drive to the store because I'm out of milk for my coffee, and I recognize, oh, like if that car had just been a few inches to the left, I would have totally been killed and that I wouldn't have made it home with my delicious coffee. Then that can give us a greater appreciation of actually being here. So that's the value of having that peripheral vision. And we might even have messages. I'll give a brief anecdote. A friend of mine from Woodstock spoke about when she was hitchhiking, rather unsafely, in when she was a person in her teens and 20s. And there was this one guy at a truck stop that said, oh yeah, I'll give you a ride, just meet me out back. And she said she literally, went to wash her hands in the bathroom and had a vision that this guy was going to kill her and stuff her in a dumpster. And she jumped out the bathroom window and she ran away so she didn't have to deal with him. Those are crucial choices where you can literally get information from the peripheral versions of yourself that say, don't get in that guy's car, jump out the window, do anything you possibly can in order to avoid that, because I'm dead in my grave talking to you and telling you what's going to happen if you actually make that choice. Back to the questions in the chat. Okay. And that was Charlotte. Charlotte saying she also felt like she has help in the energetic realms. I would say that the help is our peripheral selves that we can literally hear and get guidance from, not just after the fact, but when we're actually submerged in the moment, telling us, hey, don't get in that guy's car, or hey, live your life differently, or hey, sometimes it is about a profound health realization. Some people suddenly realize, hey, I really need to change my diet, or I really need to stop smoking tobacco, or I really need to start exercising, or I really need to start doing whatever for my life. And that's because there are peripheral selves that are speaking to us either from the sides or from the future saying, if you don't change, you will develop blah, blah disease, and it's time to change now. Okay. Person is saying she understands that the soul is like the hard drive. Yes. Yes. Charlotte, understanding that you might be on your 10 billionth try. Okay, so here's a really wonderful question from Jeannie. The FRL will kill AI inside our body. Wonderful, wonderful question, because I portray this experience, what we are having, what we are doing right now. Let me hold up the lasagna just for this. What we are doing right now on this planet is we are developing the antidote to the infection or infestation of technology that we are experiencing. So, and I'll go into this on a subsequent lesson. And the lesson is about galactic history. It's all the backstory of why we are domesticated, why we are in this domesticated human format, and why technology exists. Because literally, if we were not in our domesticated format, we wouldn't need technology. Like I use contact lenses as corrective lenses to be able to see clearly. If we were not in our domesticated format, I would not need contact lenses. I would not need to, cook eggs in the morning or drink coffee in the morning. I would get all of my information and energy and nourishment directly from the stellar network by being a light eater. So clearly we're in this domesticated human format. And right now, what we're trying to do is transcend those inner limitations by doing maneuvers that rearrange us and free us, like the flying rainbow lasagna. At the same time, there's this transhumanist agenda, and that is the agenda to say, oh, your physical body isn't enough, and who you are as a consciousness or a pure spirit or a being that is connected in love to higher dimensional, less dense realms, that's just not enough, and that you need something extra, like implants and microchips, or some kind of neural lace, or some kind of nano crap, that you need something more than what you are in order to reach these transcendent levels. And I couldn't disagree with that basic premise more, that the real truth is when we are, that's why I call this show Lessons for Full Spectrum Humans, when we are full spectrum humans and we have activated and cultivated all of our energy centers and we are completely connected to the higher dimensional, less dense realms. And when we are able to use flying rainbow lasagna as like a tool to erase out from our DNA what we do not wish to have and write in what we do wish to have, we can transcend all of the need for technology. So right now, there's this transhumanist push to hijack the creative capacity of humanity. This is your imagination. This is your inner movie screen. This is literally how we give birth to reality in each moment. It's the question of quantum observership. Quantum observership, this happens from living beings like you and me, observing the world of uncollapsed waveforms and turning it into an actual physical reality, like with real food that we can eat, with real people that we can touch, with real things that we can do. That's a pretty special thing that machines cannot do. It is the creative capacity. Our creative capacity is not just the capacity to paint a painting or to play some music and sing a new song, or to create new people through the womb, or to create new skin cells. If I scratch off my skin cells, I create new skin cells. That's not just what our creative capacity is. Our creative capacity is also the perceptive creative capacity, that in each moment, as we are moving through time with our perception, with our senses and ability to interpret our senses, we are literally painting the world around us. That creative capacity is what the artificial intelligence network is trying to hijack and to use for its own purposes and to distort. So yes, the flying rainbow lasagna is the tool that I'm bringing here in order to transcend, or to, let's say, ammunition in the battle, even though I try not to make it all about the words and vocabulary of war. I try to make this about a birth experience or an unfoldment or a metamorphosis, because this is not just about having an adversary. And basically what I do is I do a DNA dance that I call the flying rainbow lasagna. And the dance, it takes a long time to learn it. So buckling down and learning these concepts about the time vortex will help you to be able to embody this shape and actually do the dance. And when I actually do the dance, what I'm doing is transforming my DNA, and the dance that links me from moment to moment, from train car to train car, and puts me onto that central timeline, that central possibility that is continuity of consciousness. And also I'll tell you that continuity of consciousness, when we transcend this level of reality, we might not have the same shaped face. Like you might not have the same type of body when you transcend this level of reality. However, you have continuity of consciousness. That means that you remember who you were, you remember who you were doing. However, you might metamorphosize, just like a caterpillar, into a new format. There's more questions, and I know I'm talking a lot. Okay, wait. So back to, do I use sound frequency like 528 hertz? 528 hertz for DNA repair with help of the lasagna. So I've heard different things about 528 hertz. To do what feels right for your own body. So I mostly use the frequencies of 432 hertz, and I have an instrument that's in the other room. I won't run and get it just because we're on the recording. But my instrument's like a xylophone that's tuned to 432 hertz. But that is what I use. And the idea is with tuning, there's no real right or wrong. It's just like saying, should this be fire engine red or should this be magenta? And if this is magenta, then this orange should be slightly different in relation to it. And this yellow should be slightly different in relation to it. So it's a different calibration. So I usually say that there's no flat out always and never no right and wrong in the tuning and the frequency. I've heard some people say that they feel that 528 is not an effective frequency for healing. So I would say that each person needs to do what feels right for their own body. Just like I eat scrambled eggs in the morning for breakfast, but that might not feel right for your tummy. So please do what you feel right in your own ears and in your own tummy. Yes, that's what Jeannie was saying, 528 is dangerous. This is what some people say and believe. Each person is entitled to experiment with their own, because I've also heard 720, 728, 444. Like I'm saying, there are all different shades of red that we can define as red and then calibrate everything upward, because red would be like the C note. There, let's see. Is So that's my piano over here is tuned to 440. That's the traditional tuning. And so that makes this C like this, but my other instruments tuned to 432, and that makes it slightly different. And so that means that the instruments don't necessarily sound good together, but the 432 one feels wonderful in my body. So that's the one that I use. All right. So this person asks a wonderful question. How would we know if we are on the path of least likelihood? That is excellent. The real symptom is you know you are on the path of least likelihood if you don't die. You know you're doing it right. So right now, we can all say, like, pat yourself on the back. We're all doing really awesome. We're not dead. We're on that path. And please understand also that it's what we're experiencing is a refinery of consciousness, just like going from a blurry vision, like with a lens and a telescope, and we're turning the lens until it gets focused, 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 focused. So with each moment, with each experience, with each moment that we're flowing through time, we are constantly being focused. And the focus that we're experiencing is in what we emit, like the non-physical vibration of the tone, the music, that we emit from our bodies, our belief system, what we think and feel, how we relate to others. This is why I say we're submerged in a genetic symphony. Even if I weren't literally singing with my mouth, even if I just tried to sit very still in the corner of the room and not do anything, I would still be vibrating like a flying rainbow lasagna and emitting all of this music. I'm highly aware of that. And this is true of all of us. We're all musicians submerged in a symphony. We're all emitting all of this music, and that's appropriate. That's the way it's supposed to be. And then the challenge is, as we each individual become a better musician, then we become better able to integrate with the other musicians that are also here. The other musicians include microbes, like the microbes in your tummy that help you to digest your food, or the microbes on the surface of your skin that helps keep our skin healthy and clear and free of pathogens. How about the micronutrient realm, like the realm of little tiny particles of copper and magnesium? We have to be friends with and integrate with that realm. We also have to integrate with the macroscopic realm of plants and animals, big giant palm trees that are outside of my window now, or cats that sit on the bed, or bears that walk through the woods, and also the planetary structure, and also the solar system, and also the heliosphere, and also the stellar network, outward to the grandest macroscopic expansion that we possibly can. So that's, and on my piano, that would be like integrating here. Just make a little bit of room here. I don't know if you can even hear that sound, that the highest little notes also have to integrate with the lowest notes. And that's basically, we have to learn that lesson in our own bodies and on our own planet before we are ready to get off the surface of our planet and interact with beings that are any place else. That we have to learn that level of basic respect. How to be a good musician. Be a good musician on your own planet, be a good musician in your own neighborhood, and then the rest of the symphony will say, oh, look, you're a good musician, come jam with me, come play with me. So this is what we are all learning in this process of refinement. So we continually focus that lens more and more and more until we are more aligned with that central core timeline. And I'll also tell you this, our planet is doing the same thing. We are analogous, you and me and everybody in this body, we're like the little yeast cells that live on the surface of my skin. We're living on the surface of Earth. And Earth is transforming into flying rainbow lasagna too. This is not just our own individual journey, it's a planetary journey. This is why I say we're growing the antidote in this petri dish for something that is happening and has been affecting our entire solar system. So Earth is learning to become a better musical player and integrate better harmonically with the rest of consciousness elsewhere. I saw there's more questions. Okay. So person asks, oh, okay. Is the first step to spin our chakras differently than apply the FRL? So the first step is everything that you think and learn is affecting the dance of your DNA. Most people unconsciously ingested a lot of programming from either your parents or caregivers growing up, that all about how your body functions, how death is a reality, aging is a reality, all of those things. And that's the first thing, is just ingesting a new mental program. So I jokingly thank people for coming here to the webinars and lasagnifying themselves or eating lasagna. When you eat lasagna, what you're doing is learning new ideas. And teachers like Bruce Lipton, he speaks about epigenetics. And this is the idea that what we think and what we learn has an impact on the behavior of our DNA and the behavior of our genes and the expression of those behaviors. So just learning new things affect the dance of your DNA. That's just if you watched a Bruce Lipton video and learned about epigenetics, you'd be like, ah, I'm not just fated to develop diseases. I'm not just stuck with what I was given. I can actually change because identical twins do not develop identical diseases. So there are things that we can do in order to change our inner understanding and then change that manifestation. So it's just like this. If you're asking me, Aurora, how do I learn to dance like a flying rainbow lasagna? That's like, how do I learn to play the piano? Well, the first thing in learning to play the piano is let's learn what the notes are and then learn how the notes fit together. So this is learning what the chakras are. And last week we did how they fit together and how each one is a reverberation from the central core source or the destination. And today we learned all about the time vortex and about aligning ourselves and becoming more refined through time. So each time that we learn a new concept, that affects the dance of your DNA. And then that's, music theory. And then eventually, don't worry, it's not only an intellectual exercise. Eventually, you get the actual dance steps. So the part of it is meditation. When you meditate and when you practice mindfulness, that you are getting your energetic bank account together. That's what I showed you in that sketch. The heart, getting enough energy to make that whirling vortex of energy at the level of the heart so that the telescope, that's your higher faculties, can sit on top of that like a rotating gimbal, like a mechanical actual apparatus that sits on top of your heart that then can do these activities. And then once you've got your higher faculties active, then it's a question of jumping into the next highest dimension. How does the caterpillar metamorphosize into the butterfly? What is that actual leap? That's what it means, the quantum leap. It's not just a cool catchphrase, quantum leap. It literally means a little electron has to save up all of its energy, get super excited at its present level of excitation, its present electron shell. And then when it has enough money in its energetic savings account, boom, it jumps to the next electron shell. That is what we do in order to become flying rainbow lasagna. So first, you learn the intellectual concepts, begin to apply those intellectual concepts by meditation and sun gazing to your own DNA. And then there's actual dance steps. I teach it like a dance step that is based on, movements of 8, because there's 8 flanges to the lasagna. I'll dance around with you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the basic dance of the lasagna, it's a up, down, side, side, in, out, and then 7, 8 is spinning around like this and like this. I just did that super fast for you. That's like if I said, oh, it's the beginning piano lesson, I'll just play a little Mozart for you and then you'll all just pick it up that fast. No, and I don't expect that. And I use this joke all the time. The little girl with the violin that she got at the birthday party, and she couldn't play it right away. And she said, it's broken, it doesn't work. It does work. It just takes time to become a virtuoso. So I'll do just a few more, then I'll finish the level 1 recording. So this person says, what's my take on dreams? So look, I am not a very effective or cultivated dreamer. Like, I have not mastered lucid dreaming or any of that. And part of that, like, I deal with epilepsy as an artifact of the brain damage that killed the person that used to be in this body before I walked into it. And part of that was disruptions, nocturnal seizures and things like that. So I am very happy if I sleep through the night of 8 hours, and it's very rare for me to remember my dreams or control my dreams. So I know that some people are very active in the dream realm, and I consider it to be an astral realm that is like along the lines of the membrane of death, but it's not the actual membrane of death. So it's like a similar type of membrane between levels of consciousness, but you do not have to leave your physical body in order to experience those membranes. But it is occupied by similar type of occupiers of the interstices, so you have to be prepared to navigate some nastiness if you are going into that realm. Next question. Do we have to work with energy, frequency, and vibration to master the lasagna? I would say yes. That's like saying if you wanted to master playing the piano, you would have to learn about sound vibrations and sound frequencies, because which are the notes that sound good together? Those notes sound good together. These notes don't sound good together. So you have to master how all of these harmonic notes fit together in your body. Your body is your instrument, and we are all part of this cosmic symphony, cosmic dance party. It's actually very exciting and wonderful. Okay, do you think that we will eventually only need to eat sunshine literally like the way breatharians do? Yes, I do. use this, I tell people this all the time. When I first came in here as Aurora into this physical body, I thought, this is great. All I need to do is eat pure sunlight. I didn't understand that we were in transition, that I was in transition as an individual. We are in transition as a human species, human culture, and that our planet was in transition. So that would be like saying, if I thought, oh, I just joined the symphony, all I have to do is play my own triangle and everything will be fine. Like, no, actually the symphony is made of everything from triangles to kettle drums to oboes to violins. So in order for us to return to being able to eat sunlight, we need to transform the entire genetic symphony. We need to change everything. We need to change our own bodies, our own instruments. We also need to change how we structure our society, because if you eat sunlight, then your food is dependent upon access to sunlight, and you're not going to be able to live someplace in the wintertime where there's literally no sun. Then we have to change how we apportion sunlight, who's allowed to live where, how mobile are you allowed to be. All of these things come into play. We have to totally restructure our entire world if sunlight becomes a primary food. So if I lived back in Woodstock, New York, and sunlight was my primary food, I wouldn't get food from November to March. That's not effective. That's like, you know, your garden dies in the wintertime. So we would have to change, maybe become nomadic so that we could literally follow the sun and go to places where there is sun all the time. So this is a very literal way of thinking, but just understand that it's a profound change. To get to that level of being a pure light eater is a profound change. And it also means that we have to restructure our physical body too. So it takes time, just like learning to play the piano takes time. Don't be unduly impatient, or writing a symphony or doing any great work takes time. We will get there. It just takes a little bit. We're on the road to get there. Yes. Was there any distorted frequency happening last week? Okay, I'll just do a brief, what's going on in the birth process. Right now we are giving birth to a new dimension, and the new dimension is the end result of the combination of matter and energy. So matter and energy, this is matter, this is energy, this is matter, this is energy, matter, energy. We're beginning that combination process internally in our own bodies. When you dance like a flying rainbow lasagna, that's essentially what you're doing. And we're creating a new form of matter. That's not matter that's separate from energy. It's matter that is imbued with energy. And energy can be considered consciousness or spirit or awareness or, you. So we're talking about, in the past, matter has responded to conscious thought, but only very slowly. And now we're talking about matter responding to conscious thought instantaneously. And this is also part of inner self-cultivation, because we have to be certain that we take radical self-responsibility for what we create and what we send out from inside of ourselves. If we get this paintbrush of our minds and it becomes totally activated and we can make anything we want with our minds, we have to be certain that we have refined our minds and our emotions and healed our traumas so that we are not simply creating from a place of trauma. And let me just wrap up. Let me get to the last questions here. So eating sunshine, and I have a whole lesson that's all about eating sunshine that comes in a few more weeks down the road. But basically, I do safe sun gazing. I don't advocate that people stare at the sun with their physical eyes. I always wear a hat, and I use the hat to kind of like use the brim to shade my eyes. Or if I do it inside, I use the curtains or the edge of the window to shade my eyes, because you can close your physical eyes. It's not about the physical light going into your physical eyes. It's about your inner eye, that higher faculty apparatus, connecting with, like a telescope, like an elephant's trunk, the stellar network. So I think of it, this literally is attention, from Greek attenuos, meaning to reach out. I literally envision this like an elephant's trunk that reaches out, and it's like a tendril, and it touches the sun, and it brings all of that energy into me. And there's also good ways to breathe it in. Just like if I gave you some soup, you're like, what do I do with it? Well, you put it in your mouth, then you swallow it down your throat, and you put it in your tummy, and then it feels good. So there's a whole teaching about sun gazing and how to do it, but I do that every day. And that's why I'm so happy I'm down here in Southern California now. I was in Northern California where it was always cloudy and overcast every day. I didn't get to eat as much food as I needed to eat. So here I can do my sun gazing, eat my sun every day. And that's literally where I get these ideas from. It's literally where I know, what am I going to say on my radio show? What am I going to say on my webinar? I get my food from the sun, and then I translate it into English language words that I can share with everyone else. But that's pretty much what I'm doing. So I think I've gotten all the questions in the chat. Last question is about needing glasses. So yeah, I use corrective glasses because I tell everyone I don't try to pretend to be perfect or anything other than what I am. The brain and neurological damage that happened from the event that killed the previous occupant, it also caused a lot of eyesight changes. And I thought that I didn't know. I thought, oh, like my eyes would be fine. I didn't understand that this would be a 17-year-long journey. So at a certain point, I'm like, look, I'm gonna be here for a little while. I'm gonna need some glasses or something. So I got glasses and I got contact lenses, and this is what I use. So I'm facing the same exact challenges that anybody in a human body submerged in this cultural milieu is facing. So this is like, I have total solidarity, even though I don't, it's like, if you move to France, you might not have been born in France, but you have all of the same challenges, the same feelings. You're alongside all of the native French people. That is my experience of being here. I wasn't born in this physical body, but I'm facing all of the same challenges that we're all facing. And this is all about solidarity and continuing this journey together, like geese flying in formation. We don't have to be a lone hawk flying across the sky. We can fly in formation and help each other on the soul migration. So let me use that as the finishing point for wrapping up level 1. Let me stop the recording on this, and then I'll move on to level 2. So thank you so much for all of the really good comments and insight on this one, and move on to level 2. Thank you.